Yeah.
Welcome everybody to the Dementia Knowledge Network for the month of May. The year is flying along. Thank you to everybody who's come along today. I will just start by doing a bit of an acknowledgement of country. So our meeting today is being held on the lands of the Wurundjeri and I believe the Wadawurrung people, Cathy, if I'm correct, in Geelong.
Yes.
And I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I will throw over to Sarah to formally introduce our guest presenter today.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'd like to introduce Cathy Roth OAM. Cathy's had a career transitioning from diagnostic radiography to convention centre management to director with the Australian International Air Show to executive management consultancy. Has seen Cathy as a leader in business and the wider community fields over many years. Leadership roles have included the first female president of the Geelong Chamber of Commerce, the first female Rotary Club president in the ANZO region, and Rotary District Governor during Rotary's 100th year. Cathy's chaired many committees, has undertaken a number of international appointments for Rotary. In 2015, following her husband John's diagnosis of early Alzheimer's disease, pardon me, Cathy and John established PALZ, Professionals with Alzheimer's, an organisation replicating the workplace environment of intellectual stimulation, professional development and peer interaction, ensuring ongoing dignity and self-respect despite diagnosis. So thank you very much, Cathy, for joining us today. We're really interested to hear more.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And just let me fight technology and get my PowerPoint up and
while you're doing that, Cathy, could I just ask that everybody mutes themselves if you're not asking a question or speaking? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really honoured to be presenting to you because all of you do such amazing work, and we're just a very little chess piece on the big chessboard that is dementia. My path started actually 30 years ago when my parents-in-law were both diagnosed with dementia. My father-in-law had Alzheimer's and my mother-in-law had Lewy bodies. And because they were Hungarian migrants and very suspicious of anything to do with the government, it fell to me to be their carer. And I did so willingly. They're amazing people. It was therefore a little bit of deja vu when John's diagnosis came through, and something both of us had been dreading. So in what seemed like the space of a moment, John went from being the person operating and in charge of his destiny and the destiny of others, and all of a sudden he became the person that was being looked for, looked after, and it was a fairly big transition for him, despite having seen his parents go down a similar path. So it got us to thinking what it was that he still needed to allow him to be the best person that he could be. And when we started to look into what the impact of dementia was on people and their fears, the greatest of those fears were the forgetting of loved ones, being a burden, and being able to take care of oneself. But almost equal with that was the feeling of losing who I am. And neither John nor I wanted to lose the amazing person that I think he is, and he should think he is. Oops, I've just gotten too far. It's okay, going back, doesn't matter, it's just a quote. So we came across a quote that said, what we're looking for in life is to become the best form of who we could become. So he and I sat down and thought, what is the way that as a person diagnosed with dementia, that he is able to be the very, very best person of himself that he could be. And it was, we both sort of arrived at the same point of being the who he is and the what he is has always been interested in. And most of that fell within a medical field, and it was that led us into the development of PALZ, professionals with Alzheimer's. Because when we looked at what those who had been diagnosed would be most able to maintain themselves, it was about the challenging themselves and the connectedness and of course the healthiness, but keeping on finding a purpose and keeping the soul nourished. It wasn't about moving into an environment where John became the subject of care. I wanted us to walk this journey together. So we focused on professionals because we found that when John went for his first respite session, he was put into a room and given a ball to roll down a gutter. And he rang me up and he said, "Get me out of here. I can't do this." And I said, "What would you like to do?" And he said, "I just want to keep on being a doctor. I just want to keep on doing what I've always done." So we looked around for any sort of stimulation that would support that. And U3A was an option that we looked at, but John felt uncomfortable. He felt he needed to explain his situation and didn't want to do that. And there was very little else. He's not a carpenter, so men's shed didn't interest him. And he found that playing golf was social but not intellectually stimulating. So I said to him, what is it that you're looking for from that stimulation? He said, "I'm used to analysing situations. I'm used to sharing deep and intense discussions with other doctors. I'm used to problem solving. I'm used to things that just are like ongoing puzzles of life." And more than that, he said, "My friends are all from my profession." And sadly, we thought about it, and the nature of medicine often determines that the friends are other doctors. They're not widespread as they should be. So he felt that his profession gave him dignity and self-respect, and that was important to him. And we really needed to maintain that feeling of dignity and self-respect for him. Murphy's Law. I have to apologise. My husband's out there and someone's knocked on the door, so I'm hoping that he can manage that. And when we started looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that self-actualization is such a critically important part of it. It's not it's not in the middle there. It's top, and we needed him to feel a sense of self-actualization through what was happening. And my role actually sat down in the yellow part of loving him and wanting him to belong and worrying about his safety and trying to ensure his physiological needs and his self-esteem were met. So I felt that it was important for us to work together on this. And when we sat down and looked at it from a medical perspective, that he started into this journey with mild cognitive impairment, and sitting in the whole panorama of impacts of dementia, it wasn't an end point in itself. It was just part of a journey that may or may not change. And we felt that for most people that they didn't come out of the doctor's office with a diagnosis and next day suddenly be in a nursing home with a terminal situation. There was a lot of journey in between. So we looked at what it is that he was doing in his workplace. And there were group meetings. He was used to listening to high-powered speakers and used to attending conferences, used to discussing with people what was happening in their lives and in their area of involvement and about the industry in general. And from my involvement in the business industry, I guess you would call it, I was used to the same thing, which then reminded us that for many of the partners of those diagnosed, that they too have come from that high-functioning background. And in moving into the carer mode, oftentimes themselves feel disconnected from their own environment. So we needed to have a group that included partners that allowed for stimulating presentations at CEO level, that were going to demand the strategic thinking that this group had always presented in their own workplace, and that allowed questions that allowed no question to be a silly question, because in the workplace, when you're working strategically, no question is a stupid one. So we felt it also needed to have a social component. So we thought, well, we'll have the formal meetings 1 month, and then the social meetings discussing the presentation of the previous month on the alternate months. And we found already that for some groups that they will break off into small groups, and for others they'll meet together and have lunch. During COVID, I was very concerned that we wouldn't be able to continue. What we did was switch to monthly speaker presentations, and have quite a bit of question time at the end of it. The concern was how would they manage with computers, and since most of them use computers in their workplace, it wasn't too overwhelming, though I did have a technical expert to assist me, because as you saw at the outset, I'm not a great technician. We suggested that those who attended would have been diagnosed with MCI or early dementia, and it's not limited to Alzheimer's, it's any form of dementia. We find that as the disease has progressed in some of our attendees, that they self-select that they will no longer attend because they're not keeping up with the presentations, but the invitations are permanently extended for as long as they would want. They come from every range of background. We've got High Court judges, we've got accountants, we've got academics, medicos, just you name it, any sort of high functioning background we've got. All of them used to high level peer interaction, and all of them have been seeking a stimulating environment. So we've got a number of groups, and I'll go through the groups shortly, but we established the group as a not-for-profit, not to be a fundraiser. We are not a fundraiser. We simply wanted to ensure that we have standard operating procedures across all groups, and we wanted to have a high level of governance. But each group organised its own venue and its own speakers. Every group has, well, they don't just have one facilitator, they have two facilitators, and some of them actually, one group has a service club that has a committee set up to facilitate it. We receive an annual report from each of those groups and any advice on money spent. Governance underpins all of it. I've worked on a lot of boards over the years and continue to do so, and governance is very high on our list. We have a lawyer, a doctor and social worker as directors. They put up with me as chairman, and we have a patron. Our patron is Associate Professor Michael Woodward from the Austin Repat, who believes that this had been a big gap that was needed to be addressed, as he'd found through his patients. The group worked to a template that I've outlined earlier, and we found that that works across all groups. So we've now got groups, as you can see, across a good part of Australia. That is just about to expand. It's quite busy. So just the final thing is, where is the bridge then between PALZ and business? Well, the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry support us because the impacts on business and industry are quite profound. Not just from those who are diagnosed, but with the carers as well. And the numbers are quite amazing, that 1 in 9 employees are already dementia carers, and those figures, the impact then on the workforce, coupled with those who've been diagnosed, it's quite significant as far as business analysis is concerned. I'm waiting for some figures back. These are American statistics. I'm waiting for some figures back to see the cost impact in Australia through Vicky, and we're waiting. We believe it will be much higher than the government has anticipated. So thank you, Penelope. Marie McCabe very kindly gives me very good support from Dementia Australia. And in fact, I've presented to the board, and the board has given us both support and encouragement to keep going. If we just assume that 1% of those diagnosed came from a high functioning background, then our PALZ group should be overwhelmed. And the reason we believe that they're not being overwhelmed would be a terrible thing to not have enough PALZ groups for those who need it. But we don't believe that people are being diagnosed early enough. Those who are being diagnosed are not being referred through to support organisations fast enough. That's my belief anyway. But PALZ is about providing dignity, self-respect, meaning and connectedness for those from high-functioning roles who have MCI or early dementia. We know we're a transition group, and all we want to do is try and make the world a better place so that the Johns of the world are not in no man's land, and that they are able to maintain their dignity and respect throughout the course of their disease. So that's us in a nutshell.
Cathy, I think we lost your slides just towards the end there.
Oh,
I wonder if you would share that one, or let us know the locations of the groups again.
yes, certainly. Just hold on. I'll just share the screen again and pull it up and share. So let me go back to, sorry, I'll just.
Yep, that's it.
That's it, you've got
Yep.
that. Okay, so they're the current groups. Brisbane will start later this year. We have support from a psychiatric gerontologist who is very encouraging of us to get that up and running. So that's a few months away. Canberra won't be till later this year because the facilitator is away until later this year, but he is ready to go as soon as he's back. All the others are operational. So we go when needed. Kate, it'd be wonderful to come into South Australia because I have a cousin whose wife has dementia, and I'd love to be able to do something for her. But yep, whoever asks us to come, that we just come, we find a way of establishing a group. So did you get the slide with the impacts on business and industry? Did you see that one, Sarah?
No, we missed
Oh,
them.
you lost them.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so this gives you an indication of the figures impacting business and industry. It's horrific from a cost to industry perspective, and it's something that business and industry is happy to work with government to find a way to address it, because everyone wins. When the world is a better place, everyone wins. And Penelope, I had this slide up, which is from Dementia Australia, and as I said, if it was only 1% of those numbers, the need for PALZ is just so in place. We have to look after those who need the opportunities made available to them, and we look after so many people in so many areas, that why should we exclude one group because they come from a different workplace background? So that's why we've focused on them. And I unashamedly say that I want the best for my husband every single day, and this has been one way of allowing he and some of his peers that we do know and many we don't know to be able to feel a sense of dignity and self-respect throughout, and that is really important. So that's us.
Thank you, Cathy, and thanks, Kate. Kate has to go. I think that story, Cathy, about coming along to a respite group or a social group and being handed a ball or a ball of wool or something resonates with quite a few of us who've heard that story from other people. And I think it's amazing that you picked up that gap and have filled it so beautifully. But I think it also speaks to some work that needs to be done in our own respite groups and social support groups, maybe. Did anyone have any? Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say that, you know, I think the need has to be demonstrated for the solution to be able to be created and then implemented. And if I hadn't been lucky enough to be married to John, then maybe I would never have thought of it. But in trying to provide the very, very best environment for him, this was a logical way of being able to do that.
Yep.
Can I just ask, Cathy, how old was your husband when he was given the diagnosis?
His formal diagnosis he received when he was 69, but the reality was I had probably, he had clearly had dementia for probably 8 years before that.
Okay. Okay.
And there were just so many signs because I had nursed his parents. So I could see what was happening, and he was a high functioning diagnosee. So he was able to use his intellectual store to be able to work with it for an amazing length of time, and until recently, you know, he's still conversant. He's still cheeky. He's all of those things. He just doesn't remember where the toilet is and things like that.
Yeah. Can I also ask another question? Do you have people that attend these groups that have like frontotemporal dementias, a different kind of dementias?
Yes.
And
yeah.
I guess at some stage with the progression of the illness, their ability to participate in these wonderful groups will be reduced. And do you often have people that can't, I imagine, you know, if there's kind of psychotic symptoms or real disinhibition and all of that happens, that they would not fit quite well in this group? Is that right?
We so before anyone joins a group, I meet with them, or the facilitator meets with them, and we do, again, thanks to Dementia Australia and the excellent information that they provide, we do just look at the different actions or reactions of people within the group that, you know, we certainly do get different reactions from people at different times, but the group themselves, because they have been briefed beforehand, don't have a discomfort with it. And we also brief our speakers so that when they're coming into the environment, they are able to just be comfortable and to just continue with their presentation despite what's happened. If it became disruptive, our facilitators are briefed and are able to just gently move the person aside for a cup of tea or something like that. So there's a lot of briefing goes on before that actual meeting happens.
Okay, I had not heard of this organisation, and it's great because I work in the aged person's mental health team, and we certainly see a lot of people, and we've had some very, you know, high functioning professional people that would have been really good in this kind of environment. Yeah, thank you.
Kathy, do you mind stopping sharing your screen just so we can see each other for the questions?
Oh, certainly. Yes, sorry about that.
That's all right. So want to see your faces.
Concentrating on the questions. So there we go. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So did anyone else have a question for Cathy about the PALZ program or anything else?
I actually had a question, Cathy, around the presenters, the guest speakers that you have at the PALZ meetings. I know you mentioned that the actual meeting and the regular attendees are likely to have some, you know, organisation in who speaks and what topics they cover and that type of thing. Is it necessarily related to dementia, or is it just general?
Never. No,
right. Never.
It's never related to dementia. It is purely workplace. For instance, we had the CEO of Avalon Airport came and spoke to the Geelong group, and he said to the group at the start, "This is a brain tank that I'm going to access through my presentation. I'm going to throw out questions. I'd appreciate your input." and the room just erupted with the skill set that was there. And at the end of it, he said that was the most significant business meeting he'd ever attended, and he was taking a number of the points that had been raised straight back to his executive team. So no, we're there to put them back into their workplace. We have our meetings where possible in the environment in which the presentation's being made, so that, for instance, in August, we've got a boardroom presentation in the boardroom at GMHBA by their CEO. So those are the sorts of things that we're looking at, where we want those attending to drop back into workplace mode. It's interesting, in Indigenous communities, the teaching is all done by the stories passing from one generation to the next, and that's wisdom. And this is based on wisdom, the wisdom that's retained and the wisdom that is in place already. And we know that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not anything other than a very simple person. But it makes sense to me, if someone who has had a stroke can relearn to use parts of their body by training other things to work, then why can't it work with the brain to create new neural pathways by having these new experiences, new intellectual experiences put in place? And I'm the eternal optimist. I think that until someone proves to me something can't be done, then done it all, I'm going to give it a shot.
Amazing, thank you. I had one other question that ties to this one, which was around the number of your groups on average. Do you have sort of an approximate average number of people who attend?
Yeah, generally we will have around 6 to 10 couples. In fact, that we set our maximum at 10 couples. But we find traditionally they're around about 6 couples, and we find that's a really good number for excellent interaction. If we have to create more groups who cater for more people, we will do that. Though I have to say, I've spent all my children's inheritance and I've used up every friend I've ever had. But that aside, where there's a need, it's got to be met. And this is what we've got to do. Well, this is what we've got to do.
How many groups do you have in Melbourne, Kath? And where are they located? Are they all over the place?
We only have one. We're still only a few years old, and we've just come through 3 years of COVID, or 2 years of COVID. So we have our central Melbourne group.
Which is based where?
And its meeting place is the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry boardroom.
In the city?
Yep.
Okay.
So, but yeah, if there's other groups needed, well, there'll be a friend out there.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to say, Kath, it's just a lovely example of sort of entering the person with dementia's world and keeping that alive for them.
Thanks, Penelope. It's just so important to keep the person. Look, I'm very aware. I am not the person with the disease, and I don't want to overstep my mark. And I know it's nothing for us without us. I truly, truly agree and support that. But if I can do something from that outside that makes John feel the person he was, then that to me is the most important thing. And from the feedback we're getting from those who attend our groups, the feeling that the peers had friendships again with peers, because can I tell you is that since John was diagnosed, one doctor has kept in touch. Out of all of the dozens, hundreds of doctors we've known, one has kept in touch with him. Now, so in a moment he moved from having this huge support network in a workplace to being totally isolated. And the mother tiger in me came out. I wanted to gun the lot of them down, but it wasn't appropriate. So I had to come up with some other way of ensuring that his peer support group would be a peer support group that he's very comfortable with. And his new friends include an accountant, a structural engineer who built some of the biggest dams across the world. There's another guy who's been chairman of 6 major listed companies, you know, and they all laugh and joke and talk together the way he used to do with his medical peers. And that's what I want for him. And I think every single person who is facing, if I was facing dementia myself, I would want that for me too.
Yeah.
Cathy, I had just one more question about referral to PALZ. Does that all come through Dementia Australia? I know you mentioned they are keen supporters of, no? Doesn't?
Sorry?
The referrals, so where do your participants hear about PALZ when they first come along?
It's interesting. They sometimes hear about it from someone who's attended the group. We have some referrals through from Dementia Australia, which has been great. And I might say, with incredible support, they're just amazing, the work Dementia Australia do. I do a lot of work with NARI, so through what we're doing with NARI, sometimes people hear about it, but most of all they hear about it in a conversation with their friends down the street, where someone says, I went along to this and it was great.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And I think we often talk in this group about the need for greater referral pathways, because it is often stumbling across something. That's the way people hear about it. So hopefully we can help promote your group as well from our networks. And
Thank you.
a few more people along.
That would be great. My children think that I'm slightly crazy at 75 to, this was not their plan for me at 75, but as I said to them, the journey actually started way back when John's parents developed dementia, and I think his father was a surgeon also. And I think that sort of 30, 40 years of observing, sort of refined some of the thinking, and perhaps allowed me then to be able to jump into it perhaps more than I would have if John had have been my first experience. So things happen for a reason. You just got to go with the way life directs you.
Cathy, just building on Elizabeth's question, as everyone in the room is a professional working with people with dementia, is there anything else we can do apart from perhaps grab some of your flyers and promote the group?
That would be the single best thing, the promotion of the group, and to let doctors know, you know, it's really so distressing that we're not getting, and not just in the groups that I'm dealing with, but I hear it time and time again that there is a reluctance for doctors to diagnose or refer through. And the quicker we get people into a network where they can be supported, the longer they're going to be functional. And, you know, I said to John, I'm planning his 90th birthday and he's 78. So he's got a lot of living to do before that. So yes, those referrals are just critical. Thank you.
And can we get that flyer from your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I'll email through we've just updated the flyer, okay. So I'll email that through to you. That
Lovely.
would be awesome. Thank you.
All right, terrific. Well, if there are no other questions from anyone, I'll just thank Cathy so much for coming along this afternoon and inspiring us, I think, with your journey and the amazing results you've had setting up those groups for professionals with Alzheimer's disease. And yeah, thank the group for coming along. Thank you so much, Cathy. We've had a terrific and really interesting afternoon.
Thank you all very much. Thanks for that, Sarah.